I've played 7 games in a week before, a couple times actually, but what if I played 8 games a week for 3 weeks straight? Because that's what I just did for the Rival Spirit Games Discord server's first game jam, link in the description. If you didn't know, a game jam is when you have to make a game that follows some kind of prompt, and you only have a short amount of time to do it. For this jam, the prompt was to pick one or more between the words soul, double, or reinforce. You can make any game you want as long as something ties into your chosen words. Finally, as an additional rule for the jam, you can only have a maximum of 18 cards per player. This is supposed to emulate playing a game with only one booster pack, as I did with my previous game jam video. The contestants had 2 weeks to develop their games, create the frames, come up with the art assets, and write up their rule books. At the end of the 2 weeks, we had 24 entries, at which point the 4 judges played all of them. Unlike some other game jams, every game in this jam was played twice. After we played a game, we scored it based on factors such as the ease of learning, the game balance, the effectiveness of the base mechanics, and how well it tied into the theme. Oh, and I guess how fun it is, that seems pretty important. I don't think I can go over every single game, but I definitely like to cover the top 5 scoring games and 5 honorable mentions. The descriptions for these games are going to be based off of the Game Jam rulebooks, so I'm sorry if I get anything incorrect. The top 3 games of this jam will receive printed booster packs of their game thanks to this jam and this video sponsor, Launch Tabletop. Ever wanted to produce your own game but don't know where to start? Launch Tabletop makes it easy. They offer print on demand and full-scale production, plus a new randomized TCG booster printing option that lets you fine-tune your card's rarity distribution at a print on demand scale. Neat. Their pricing is solid, their prints are quality, their web app is modern and easy to use, and honestly, it's just a great way to bring your game to life. They're probably going to be my first option when I finally produce my game. Check out Launch Tabletop today and start creating. And speaking of creating, let's get to this top 5. Starting us off in 5th place, we have Vest Souls by Indie Jarm. This is a game that had a sly little twist on the 18 card per player rule. In this game, there were 2 shuffled decks of 18 cards and each player drew 9 from both, and then shuffled that to make their deck. The 2 decks contained the 2 card types, Vessels and Souls. The goal of the game is to play vessels to the board, slap a soul in them, and then ascend the soul into the next plane, losing it forever but giving you victory points. The player with the most victory points when both players have no cards left in their decks is the winner. Each vessel and soul have attack and defense points that combine, because you can also attack your opponent's vest souls. Ascension happens at the beginning of your turn, so anything you play will have to survive a turn if you want those sweet victory points. Souls can also have a release effect that makes them work like a spell card where they can be played from your hand, do a thing, and then go to the discard pile. I think those are most of the game elements. Now let's look at a turn real quick. Like I said earlier, the first thing is the Ascension phase. Any Vest Souls ascend, sending the soul to the ascended pile, never to be used again. And then you draw 1 card from your deck. Then there's the play phase where you can play 2 cards. You can either play a vessel from your hand to the board or attach a spirit to a vessel that's already there on the board. After that is the attack phase where any of your vest souls can attack your opponent's vest souls. Attacks are carried out one at a time. The attacker declares their target, which can be any opposing vest soul. Then the attacker can use any release soul effects, followed by the defender using any release soul effects. Gotta get those little battle tricks in there. After all that, if the attacker's attack is higher than the defender's defense, the defending vessel is obliterated and both halves go to the discard pile. Finally, the attacking soul is also destroyed, but the vessel stays. You can attack as many times as you want, and once you're satisfied, you pass the turn to your opponent, where they start at the top and attempt Ascension. And that's basically the game. I think it's a neat little spin on a creature battler, needing 2 halves to make a whole creature like the Host and Augment cards from Magic's Unstable set. The various triggers and timings for abilities were well put together, and there were some cool effects that played with the system. Unfortunately, due to the split the pack nature of the game where both players got 9 cards, during my judging my opponent got every removal effect in the game and I was left with the battle tricks. So my opponent ascends 1 time for 2 points and then just keeps me off of ascension with removal effects for the rest of the game. I could win every combat, but combat doesn't really help you win the game, it just helps you lose less. I think with more variety, this game would be pretty cool though. I'd love to see it expanded, and that's probably why it ended up in the top 5. Now let's keep it moving along like we're a Bionicle commercial in 2006. Our number 4 game for this jam is Soul Rise by Darth Icky. In this game, your pack contains a chosen character card, action cards, and map cards. You and your opponent build a battle map of different rooms and then drop your character into it, represented by a die, and then fight to the death. When it's your turn, you can take 1 action like moving a space or attacking for 1 damage to anything within your chosen's attack range. It has to be within line of sight though. There are walls and pillars on the maps. You can't attack through those unless you have piercing damage, which you can get by using your action to play a card in your hand. This one has piercing damage. There are 2 card types in your deck: dynamic cards and gear cards. Dynamic cards are the one and done effects, while gear cards are equipped to your chosen to be used later. If you want to play a card, first you have to pay the cost in the middle left. Discard that many cards from your hand to the discard pile. Cards can do things like move you multiple times or attack through a wall with a bajillion piercing damage, or let you lay a trap, a few of which start on the map, and they hurt when you step on them, but you can attack and destroy them, turning them into rubble. On the topic of being destroyed, your chosen starts the game with 6 souls and 6 health. Whenever your chosen would be reduced to 0 health, remove 1 soul and add it to your soul vessel. Not your vest soul that was last game, this is completely different. If you would lose a soul but you don't have any more, you are dead and have lost the game. Whenever you take a soul from your enemy, you gain 2 souls. Souls in the soul vessel can be used for the game's final action, to attune a soul. Your chosen has several upgrades on its card that need souls to be activated, and you can use your action to move 1 soul from the soul vessel to one of your chosen's abilities. Once you've attuned enough souls for an upgrade, you can use that ability for the rest of the game. Some actions can also be improved by removing souls from your soul vessel into oblivion. After you've done your action, you end your turn by drawing a card. If you don't got any deck left, you just shuffle your discard pile into a new one. And that's pretty much the game. Move your chosen around the map, slapping your opponent, chugging health potions, upgrading your abilities, laying traps, and sitting at bonfires. I really loved the Hero Forge models that were used for the art in this game. I'm kind of surprised with the number of card games we've had in the past few years that one hasn't done a photography-based art style with models or some other physical media like Asako Ito's Pokemon cards. I probably butchered that. I really liked the map building element at the beginning of the game. You and the other person take turns making the map and then you're gonna have to fight on it for the rest of the game. I also appreciate that there were 4 different packs to choose from. They had many of the same cards, but they all had unique characters, like my mole digging guy that wanted rubble, and then there was the witch with the rifle who could burst you down from range, and then there was a trap guy and your usual armored knight looking dude. It kind of felt like there was a little something missing though, but I'm not quite sure what it is. Maybe an extra fighter? It might have been outside the 18 card max of this jam, but maybe using 2 packs to have 2 fighters on the map at a time could open up some design space. I spent several turns at the beginning of my judging game hiding behind a pillar from the rifle saying, "Hey, you're gonna have to come get me while I sit at this bonfire and level up." And I'm not sure if it would be that easy if there was another fighter around.
Surprise,
Anyway, I don't want to armchair dev this game. It was cool and I'd love to see more. Coming in at number 3, we have Soul Servants by Dan Ovlock. In this one, you place servants to the board and attach spirits to them. You need to gain enough spirits and turn them face down so that you can promote your servants, giving their spirits a second chance and releasing them back into the material world. Doing this gains you soul points, and the first 1 to 7 wins. There's only 1 card type in this game, servants, but there's a lot going on with them. They have a tenacity number in the top right, which is its power in combat. Then we have a bound number in the top left. This is the number of spirits this card will come into play with. When you play a servant, you take cards from the top of your deck and add them face up under the servant. These are your spirits, and if you want to promote a servant for victory points, you'll need to look at the bottom left of the card. These are its soul points, which tells you how many face down spirits you will need to promote this servant, as well as how many points it will be worth when you score it. Finally, above that, there are some symbols. These are the soul abilities. They're basically keywords, but very important keywords. Oh, and I guess there's an effect text box. It might do something. It's got some words in it, maybe. In this game, you can make one action on your turn. Seems like we're combining the previous two games a little bit almost. Vessel's win condition, Soul Rise action economy, and all three of these games so far have used the soul prompt word. For your action, you can play a servant, use a soul ability, move a spirit from one of your servants to another, or you can promote a servant. Playing a servant, easy peasy. Plop that thing on the board, look at the top left, put that many cards from the top of your deck under it. Turn past Rooney. Using soul abilities though, that's where it gets wild. Your main servant can use one of its soul abilities, but to do that you have to weaken it, which is the old 90-degree angle turn. There are a fairly wide variety of soul actions, from attacking an opponent's servant, to ramping the number of spirits you have on something, to creating a shield to protect a servant from attacks, to flipping face down spirits face up, untapping or exalting a spirit, and kill. This isn't the only way to use soul abilities though. The face-up spirits under a servant can also use their soul abilities by flipping themselves face down. So this guy with the Exalt ability can flip face down to untap the servant it's attached to. Combat in this game is a soul ability. Only something with Confront can attack, and they can attack any opposing servants. All you have to do is compare both servants' tenacity. If the attacker can meet or beat it, you injure the defending servant. When injured, if a servant is exalted, it becomes weakened. If it's already weakened, it dies, and it and all of its spirits go to the discard pile, called the karma in this game. A servant also gets into the karma if it has no spirits under it. Another action you can take is that you can move one of your face-up or face-down spirits from one of your servants to another one. Gotta give him that exalt or he's a sitting duck. If you have an exalted, untapped servant with at least the same number of face-down spirits as their spirit points, you can use your action to promote the servant, putting it in the score zone, never to be seen again. All of its spirits go to the karma pile. Karma zone. Karma. There's also one other action you can perform once per turn called Oversoul. To activate Oversoul, you shuffle 3 cards in your karma back into your deck. You can now take 2 actions this turn. At the end of your turn, you draw until you have 2 cards in your hand, and your opponent makes their move. That's the game. As soon as I finally digested the rules of this game and understood how soul abilities worked,
that's when my brain starts doing things.
It was a fun dance of flipping things down and up, attacking and defending. If you notice, there was no untap step in this game, so you had to plan out how you tapped your servants, as only the Exalt ability could untap them. This does mean that you can basically lock yourself out of playing the game or lose several turns because you made a bad move, but it is a quick, albeit painful lesson to learn. The number of icons you have to learn up front is kind of heavy, but once you get them absorbed into the brain meats, it's not too bad. There was a reference sheet at the back of the rulebook, but it was, not correct. This game looked like a regular old creature battler at first glance, but it had a lot of neat stuff going on if you have the brain capacity to try to figure it out. At the opposite end of the spectrum, Danger Boat comes in with the number 2 game Under Siege, a game where you are the king of the castle and you have to play reinforcements to your castle and roll dice to deal damage to your opponent's castle and see which castle is left standing. There's 3 types of cards: your castle, which starts in play and has some abilities on it, reinforcements, which can go into any open slot on your castle, and commands, which are your one and dones. Other than the castle board, the deck, and the discard, there are also 2 dice pile areas. The used dice pile and the reserve dice pile. The game starts with 5 dice in the used pile. On your turn, you can play up to 2 cards. This is the reinforce phase. Reinforcements go into a spot on the board, and commands, well, you know how one and dones work. After playing cards, roll all of your dice and move them to the reserve dice pile. At this point, you can use card effects from your castle and reinforcements to change the value of dice, or move dice from one pile to the other. This is the roll phase. During this phase, there is a basic action you can use by spending 1 die, moving it from the reserve pile to the used pile to attack your opponent for that die's face value. You only actually deal the damage at the end of the roll phase though, so you're gonna have to write down the damage values in case shenanigans ensue. After the roll phase is the rest phase. Any remaining reserve die get moved to the used dice pile, and you draw Docerito cards and the next player starts their turn. This goes on until someone's castle is reduced from 100 to 0 health. If a player decks out, both players get 1 final turn, and the winner is whoever has the highest castle health after that. If there's a tie, then both players roll 1 die and the higher value wins. If there's still a tie, then everyone loses! And that's the game. This is a game that had a rulebook that explained the game well enough, it had funny cards, and it was just fun to manipulate the dice rolls. There were a lot of games in this jam that had edge case rules or just rules in general that weren't explained very well. So I think we got to this one and went, I can understand and execute this with no doubt in my mind? I'm not sure how expandable it is. There's only so many different ways you can adjust die rolls, but dang it, it was just a simple, fun little roll and write battle card game. Thanks for submitting this one, Mr. Seafaring Vessel of Peril. Before I unveil the number 1 pick, I kinda want to do a little lightning round of games I thought had a really cool concept but didn't end up at the top of the scoreboard. These are my honorable mentions that I would love to see more of in the future. First, I would like to shout out Soulway by Zdegenerate. It's a fun little game where you, a recently deceased person, play a game with another soul to try to determine who had the better life. Players go back and forth playing cards that have meaning, and when both players are out of cards or one decides to stop, both players add up all their cards' meaning value, the higher number wins the round, and the loser takes the difference to their certainty value, basically their life points. Any cards in the discard pile then go to your hand, and any cards that you just played this round go to the discard pile. And that's basically the game. There's something fun about how silly the theme of this game is, especially if you turn it into an anime battle. I play birthday cake to give my little brother 3 meaning.
Oh yeah? Well, I got a rare card.
That's nothing. I'll play driver's license to drive and get another birthday cake, putting it back in my hand so I can eat it again next turn. There were only 18 cards that we split in half to play, and I think it could have maybe just worked better if both players had a full 18 cards. I just ended up with the better half of the cards, and I could do my crazy combo almost every round because there were so few cards to cycle between. With a little tweaking, I think it could be pretty cool. Next, I have Shadowboxing by Bear. This is a fighting style game where players play fighting moves back and forth. When no more moves are played, the string of moves plays in reverse like a big Magic the Gathering stack or Yu-Gi-Oh chain. This is called the Punch-Out. I thought this was a cool idea for a fighting game I'm not sure I've seen before. Cards had on-play effects and or punch-out effects. The way to win was to get 3 points from specific cards though. This is another one of those games where the players ended up sharing the 18 cards in some way, and I just didn't see the point cards. I did make sure to draw both of the you can't win cards. I think with a non-card reliant win condition, this has some potential to punch out or something. Another interesting one was Arcane Pages by Akion. It was almost a deck building game, which is very ambitious with an 18 card limit. In this one, you have a spell book that has 1 card revealed. You can use this spell to attack monsters that you and your opponent have revealed from their own little monster deck. The goal is to get the killing blow on monsters until you have 10 monster souls in your soul collection. You only start with a few basic spells in your spellbook though. On your turn, you can perform 2 actions. One of them is to acquire money. You can use the money to buy the other spells that were in your booster pack, which now make a hidden shop kind of thing. When you buy a spell, you can put it anywhere in your spellbook, just not as the revealed page. You'll have to use the turn a page action to get to your new spell. Spells have elements, and monsters have weaknesses and resistances. Pretty straightforward. Do more damage, do less damage, spell effect does something, monster effect does something, bada bing, bada boom. Once you've done your 2 actions, you pass the turn and let your opponent do their thing. And that's pretty much the game. The Tabletop Simulator mod even had a whole pack generation button where it just gave you a pack automatically. Neat! Unfortunately, due to the randomized nature with the weaknesses and resistances and spell elements that you have access to, it seemed like you could end up with games where you can't really do anything as your opponent knocks out everything ASAP. It's still a really cool concept though. I'll take any attempt at doing Zatch Bell card book spell thing again. How about a space game? In Distress Signal Reinforcements by Slay, you gotta place spaceships and use them to pick up scrap from several big wreckage spots across a grid, and then deliver them back to your home base. Of course, you can also just shoot your opponent's ships to scrap them and gather that instead. The game ends when one player gathers 12 scrap, or if someone ends their turn with no ships on the board. It was fun to ferry the scrap back and forth while trying to posture offensively, defending your paltry little catch. The balancing was kinda wild on it though. I was kinda just able to fly in and destroy my opponent because he didn't draw more ships. And my ship seemed way better at fighting. I bet a version 2 of this game would go hard. And my final honorary mention is Dead Point Genesis by Alex Royer 64. It's a co-op game where both players have a character and some equipment, and they have to fight 2 bosses that constantly spit out minions that are randomly assigned to attack one of the players. You have to coordinate with the other player to take out the minions efficiently so you can deal damage to the boss. As you defeat enemies, you can upgrade your equipment for even more power, but once the boss is at half health, they also become more powerful. This concept rocks! Dude, what the heck? I have no idea how you're supposed to play it though. The cards are very hard to understand. For each heads another player flips, HP 1k to that player. Take blood damage 1k each turn. Soul Overdrive, bracket, SSS bracket. I feel like we were kind of guessing with the rulebook for a good portion of it. I would really love to try this game knowing how to play it, because the main game loop and what we could understand was really cool. Okay, you've waded through my honorable mentions. Now it's time to reveal first place, the winner of the first Rival Spirits Game Jam. There were many contestants, but there can only be one winner. And that winner is Origami by Big Oron. Kami in Japanese means spirit and paper. So you win the game by folding your opponent's soul 7 times. The maximum number of folds possible on a piece of paper. This is one of those simultaneous reveal games. One person is the attacker and plays a card with a red line. If any red lines overlap a blue line from the defending player's card, they fold their soul. If a red line intersects a blue line, fold the defender's soul for every 3 intersections. Cards also have effects. Explosive revelation. In addition to that, both players also have 3 super special cards off to the side that can be used once per game to get you out of a bind. Turn all of your lines into attack lines. Replace a card with a different one from your hand, or even rotate your card. No lines overlapping now. Hey, wait. These are also all of the prompt words for the jam. Oh, I see what you did there. After an attack has resolved, that's the turn. The attacker and defender swap roles, and after 3 turns, a round ends, and both players draw 4 cards at the start of a new round. Continue until someone has folded their soul 7 times. And that's basically the game. This was just a really cool idea, and I like that the game is simple enough to teach almost anyone. I think this jam had a lot of entries from fans of TCGs and heavier board games, and I think we kind of missed the glory of a simple game. Myself definitely included. 2 of my 3 jam games I've made are all really hard to figure out on the first playthrough. Not this one though. We picked it up quick and had a blast playing it, and I definitely play it again. I'd probably teach my mom how to play it. That's why Origami is our #1 pick for the first Rival Spirits Game Jam. Overall, it was a fun jam. We got to see some really cool games. If I had one piece of advice after playing all of these games though, it's to really make sure your rulebook is in good shape. We had a lot of games where we were missing something. It could have been what a keyword means, or what happens when we made a certain action at a certain time. Those weren't so bad. We also had a few that just barely explained the structure of the game and it felt like we were guessing how to play it, and that's definitely not a spot we want to be in. A lot of these rulebooks were also just text documents with no images or very few. I'm guessing that's because of the short-term nature of the jam, but I guess I'll have to teach you my secret rulebook weapon in another video. Thanks for watching.